Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's event. Thank you for joining us for our second Let's Talk About Hanford conversation. Tonight's theme is Ask Our Managers. My name is Dana Mcfadden, and I have worked at Ecology for about 14 years, and the last 4 has been in the public involvement section. Let me introduce my coworker, Ryan Miller.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Miller. I'm a media coordinator with the Nuclear Waste Program, and I've been here for about 2 years now. So before we begin tonight's event, I'd just like to go over a couple housekeeping items. So at any time tonight, whether you're on the Facebook stream or the WebEx live stream, we really encourage you to add your comments and questions in either the Q&A box if you're on WebEx or the comment section if you're on the Facebook stream. If you have any questions to ask David or Stephanie during tonight's event, we will go ahead and we'll ask those live if you put them into the question box or the chat box on Facebook. We're also going to remind folks that these conversations that we have for the Let's Talk About Hanford series, they're geared towards those who are new to Hanford, those who only know parts of Hanford or would like refreshers, and just really anybody in general that wants to learn more about Hanford. So tonight, if we do get questions that are too specific and complex and that are better answered by our subject matter experts, we do commit to following up over or after the event over email if you provide one, or we'll do a blog following up after the event if we can't answer your questions live. So tonight's the format's going to work. We're going to after this we're going to move into an introduction of David and Stephanie. We're going to just introduce them, give you some perspectives on their impressions about Hanford and where they come from, and then we'll move into the live Q&A section, and that's where we'll answer all of your live questions. And with that, we would also like to remind folks that we ask that questions asked tonight stay focused towards Ecology's role at Hanford. Specifically, since we aren't the U.S. Department of Energy or the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, we can't speak to questions that are geared towards those agencies, but we'll do our best to answer any questions that come in. So again, try to keep your questions geared towards Ecology specifically, since we're the only agency on tonight. So with that, I think I'd like to kick it over to David and Stephanie, and I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm David Bowen, the Nuclear Waste Program Manager, and I've been here in the Nuclear Waste Program since December of 2020 when I got to join 80 plus talented and dedicated professionals here who are working on the project out at Hanford. And I came from water quality out of the Union Gap office where I'd been for about 5 years. And then prior to Ecology, I had various positions in public and private sector. I served 7 years as a countywide elected official, both as an auditor and a commissioner. And actually, this job reminds me of my commissioner work. So it's kind of combined my 2 favorite jobs. The commissioner job and then my water quality job was really enjoyable as well. I really liked the things we got to do there. I've owned small businesses, worked for corporations, everything from renewable energy to insurance, conducted some economic development activities. And then in my previous position at Ecology, I worked on some bigger projects such as the Lower Yakima Valley Groundwater Management Area and the Buckhorn Mine up in Okanagan County. And I helped Office of Columbia River with the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan.
And I'm Stephanie Schleif. Good evening, everyone. I'm the Permitting, Planning, and Budget Lead for the Nuclear Waste Program. A little bit about my background. It's not near as extensive as David just shared. I have a degree in environmental engineering from Montana Tech of the University of Montana. Those of you familiar with it, go Ore Diggers. My first job out of college, I worked as a nuclear engineer for the Department of Defense at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, which is in Bremerton, Washington. Some of the work I did there included managing their dangerous waste permit up in Bremerton for their mixed waste storage facility, and also for their facility down at Naval Air Station North Island in Coronado, California. While I was there, I wrote technical work documents for managing, storing, and shipping hazardous waste generated on submarines and aircraft carriers. After working at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, I joined Ecology's Nuclear Waste Program, where I worked for the last 7.5 years. In the last couple of years, I took on the role of Deputy Program Manager, where I assist David in managing our permitting, such as the Hanford Site-wide permit, tracking our program budget, planning and management of resources, and leading our management team. I support other managers as well as coordinating closely with our other sister ecology program, the Hazardous Waste Toxic Reduction Program, and the Environmental Protection Agency to ensure we're consistent in our application of state and federal requirements.
Awesome. Thank you both, David and Stephanie, for your introductions. With that, I'd like to move into just a couple of questions so we can share with the audience, your impressions of Hanford and your work that you've done so far. So what was your first impression of the Hanford site? David, why don't we start off with you?
Sure, thanks, Ryan. I've been in Central Washington for over 50 years, living about 60 miles north of the Hanford Site. It was one of those places I knew cleanup activity was happening, and it was taking a long time. And that's, how much I was following it. Probably I had some high school friends who worked on site as they graduated high school and that type of thing, and made the commute seem like a long commute at the time, pretty short now. So my first impression of the site has been, as I was preparing to come on board, was just how complex and diverse the project is. And, I studied and prepared, but it really doesn't give you the full sense of just how unique the project is. Stephanie, how about you?
Thanks, David. My first impression is really pretty similar to yours. The Hanford site is such a complex cleanup. There's so much history, and the regulatory framework for the cleanup is unique. But in my personal experiences, what really sticks with me is the mission that Hanford had while it operated. Walking through a facility like the plutonium finishing plant, understanding the role that facility had while it was in operation, and then looking at the progress we've made cleaning up that facility and the remaining contamination. Looking at where it's at now, the building is gone and the removal action is almost complete. I also discovered that Hanford's different than any other environmental site that I worked on just because of how long the site's been in operation, how large the cleanup is, and the type of waste that's being stored. There isn't any other cleanup site that has the same waste stored in underground storage tanks like we do. And lastly, what also marks the Hanford site is unique are the amount of people who care about the cleanup. From our Hanford Advisory Board to our stakeholder groups like the Hanford Challenge, our tribal nations, and local community, we all want to say the same thing, and that's Hanford cleanup and restore to future use.
Wonderful. Thank you both for that. And before we go on to the next question, I'd like to just remind folks that if you have questions for our live Q&A section, you can definitely submit your questions now on the Q&A box on WebEx or in the Facebook feed on the comment section. So with that, I'll go on to the next question. So what has surprised you most about Hanford compared to other sites that you've worked on before?
Well, Ryan, I'll go ahead and start with this. I found Hanford is unique compared to other projects I've worked on in several ways. And for example, just like I mentioned, the overall complexity and duration of the project can really be overwhelming. And to address all that happens on Hanford, our program regulates permits, participates in air quality, water quality, hazardous waste, toxics, cleanup, spills, environmental assessment, shorelands. And we really are a mini version of the agency with expertise in all these areas. And so that's on the one side. And the other complication is, Hanford, the majority of the complex was built 60 to 70 years ago. And besides the concerns of failure for that aging infrastructure, much which is beyond its useful life and design life, we're applying regulation to a project that was not designed with our regulatory obligations in mind. And it can often feel like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole as we write permits and brainstorm solutions with energy.
That's very interesting. So when it comes to Ecology's role in cleanup at Hanford, what do we do exactly? And how do you two ensure that Ecology is doing its part to clean up the Hanford site?
Great question. Ecology's mission is to protect the state's air, water, and land at and adjacent to the Department of Energy Hanford site. And we do that by overseeing effective and efficient cleanup to ensure sound management of mixed waste in Washington. So, if you're wondering what that looks like in reality, some of the routine work we do in our office is review and approve permit applications or modifications submitted to us by the Department of Energy and assess whether they meet the tri-party agreement, state and federal requirements, and those types of things. Stephanie?
Thanks, David. We also meet routinely with the Department of Energy on multiple levels of management. We assess our program against milestones in our tri-party agreement. We meet to talk field schedules for the actual work and the permits needed to meet those field schedules. While we might not always agree on the requirements, we do work closely together to resolve issues and do our best to support the work moving forward. And I do just want to comment on that photo that we just saw and all those binders on the table. You saw all those happy faces. I'm pretty sure that was a printout of our Hanford site dangerous waste permit. That's how big that permit is.
So before we move on to the Q&A session with the audience tonight, is there anything specific about your roles at Ecology that you want to share that you haven't discussed already?
Ryan, right now, so we can get to questions. The main thing I want to do is just, I've been here just over 7 months and can't express enough my appreciation for the team and their efforts to educate me on everything Hanford. They are dedicated, as I mentioned before, and care about the work they do and have an exceptional level of expertise they apply to work on a daily basis. So I've just been impressed with the team I've joined, and it's an honor to be part of it.
And for me, one of my favorite things that I love about the role is the teamwork. In our office, we're a matrix organization, which means I have the opportunity to not only team with David and other managers, but also our permitting staff and project managers. David mentioned earlier, Ecology is a large organization. We have experts in other programs on air, toxics cleanup, water quality, water resources, and we have the opportunities to work with those folks in a wide variety of roles. And we all share our love for the environment in common.
Wonderful, thank you both. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into a live Q&A session with those who are attending and watching tonight. So again, if you have any questions for David and Stephanie, feel free to put them in the Q&A box if you're on WebEx, or if you're on the Facebook live stream, go ahead and put your questions into the chat. And with that, I'll go ahead and start off with a question that came in from Susan Leckband on Facebook. She asked, how concerned is Ecology about waste tanks leaking?
It's of high concern to us. And as I mentioned in one of our kind of opening comments, just an overall concern for the aging infrastructure on site. I'm anticipating that we'll have confirmed leaking tanks more and more often. And, as a response to the recent notification, we have been in communications with Department of Energy at the management level, at staff level, from the governor's office, through the director's office as well. And right now we're having a really good dialogue. The tri-party agreement dictates how we respond to a notification to a tank. We're following that process right now. We get the notification, we work at a staff level. If they can't come to agreement, it gets elevated to us. And we're kind of in that elevated to the management team role right now as we move forward, and had a great conversation with energy management last week. And right now we have at least a verbal agreement to move forward with an agreed order of some kind. We don't know what the details of that are yet, and that's what we're working on currently. And it's a big concern for me personally. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you covered it really great, David. We absolutely take it seriously and want to respond as quickly as we can.
Awesome. Dana, do you see any on the WebEx yet?
One just came in. Yay. What is the status of discussion around the new tanks for the high-level waste at Hanford? And that's from Dan Series.
And I don't know, Stephanie, if you can cover that for us more. We talk about additional storage. I don't know it's specific to high-level waste necessarily, but Stephanie, can you cover that one?
I'm not sure if I know much more than you do, David, other than Ecology has been a proponent of needing additional takes out on the Hanford site for additional storage to respond to leaking tanks like what we're seeing now.
And to forward the retrieval mission side of things. And Energy is pretty focused on treating through the DFLAW facility, which I fully understand. Getting waste treated and getting it shipped off and stored permanently rather than moving it around tank to tank makes a lot of sense. At the same time, we need to be able to have a fallback position for leaking tanks, or if things don't go exactly as they anticipate with the DFLAW facility.
Awesome, thank you both. And I'll preface my next question just by saying, if anybody sees me looking around left and right, I'm just looking at my different screens. So this other question comes in also from Susan on Facebook, and she asks, how confident is Ecology that the Department of Energy is providing Ecology with timely, detailed, in-depth information?
It varies depending on the topic. From my observation over the last 7 months, the one thing that we would love to have more detail on is obviously budget and how it's constructed, and how that's moving forward. Try and get maybe earlier into the discussion on that rather than at the backside. There's also, there's a compliance complaint and PCHB hearing going on right now based on data access that was kind of started before my time. So I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's moving forward through the PCHB, and having access to the data so we can write our permits in a expedient and efficient manner, as well as compliant manner with the rules and regulations we have in place, are really important to us. So it's important. I don't know, Stephanie, more details, since some of that was before my time.
Well, I'll say from the permitting perspective, when Department of Energy provides us information, they do have to certify the information they give us is true, accurate, and complete. So we do have pretty high confidence that that information meets those requirements because it's an actual signature and certification.
Okay, I have another question off of the WebEx. This is Matthew Campbell. He asked, what air toxics are the most concern for WTP?
And I'm going to hand that one to you, Stephanie. I don't know enough about the constituents to answer that one intelligently.
Well, I have to say, neither do I. I think that would be one for our air engineers that we'd want to take back if we could make note of that one, Ryan.
Okay. So Matthew, if you want to give us your email, or we can follow up. Like I said, if we have any questions that are better suited for our subject matter experts, we'll go ahead and make a blog post here in a couple days that can share that answer. So I'll go ahead and make a note of that for Matthew to get his question answered.
And we do have engineers that work specifically on that, and we just hired 2 additional ones actually. So I'm sure we can get a good response to that question.
Awesome. So this other question also comes in from Facebook, and it's from Pauline Schaefer. She asks, approximately how much waste will be stored at Hanford permanently versus what is planned to be shipped elsewhere?
Well, right now it would be ballparks from what I know. I know that approximately 90% of the waste could be determined to be low activity waste, but it's still, much of that is anticipated to be shipped off site and stored in an appropriate repository. So I don't know that we know a specific number. I don't know if there are percentages floating around, Stephanie, that you might be able to add to that.
I am not aware of any percentages. We do have landfills out on the Hanford site, so that waste would remain there. So there's the environmental restoration disposal facility. We will have the integrated disposal facility that will come on site. We do have facilities that are currently storing waste, awaiting shipment to either the waste isolation pilot plant, or as David said, a high-level waste repository that we don't have identified yet. And I'm not 100% sure on what the percentage is. I haven't heard that number.
And the idea, from, once again, a layman for 7 months on the job, the idea is it can't sit where it's at. It needs to be stored appropriately and safely and protect the environment and human health. And so whether it's offsite or on-site, that's really our focus. Yeah, I've been studying a lot of things. I don't think I've seen a specific percentage or volume that goes off-site or stays on-site.
Thank you. We have another question off of WebEx. This is from Dan Series again. It says, has Ecology seen Energy make any budget adjustments in the direction of establishing new tanks yet?
I haven't. We don't have the detail down to the line items in the budget, which is part of what I was talking about earlier. Was more detail would be really helpful for our team to plan and think and give feedback and comment. But I do know from conversations that there is new tank storage in some of their plans. It's directed towards being able to, as they separate the different constituents and then treat it in different plants, being able to separate it, and by default, that leads to additional retrievals. But I can't tell you the specific budget adjustment, and that's one of the things that we're trying to get more detail on, how that budget is constructed.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So I'm not seeing any new questions in on Facebook yet, but I can go ahead and take another one from WebEx. So this one comes from Sharon. She asks, if the 4 dams on the Snake River are removed, will that impact Hanford?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so, because most of the flows that it's the Columbia River flowing by the site, and those flows are regulated pretty much by the hydro facilities. And I can't really think of a way that would necessarily impact Hanford. Stephanie, how about you?
I can't either, David.
Well, thank you. I will go with the next question on WebEx. This is from Dan Solitz, and I apologize to anybody whose name I mess up. Do you have past compliance budgets?
You know, and then I don't know that we physically have the compliant budget. I guess I'll diverge a little bit. When I think a compliant budget, there's a certain amount of work that's going to be needed to be done in 2022. It's going to cost this much money to do it. And when I say a certain amount that needs to be done, that's based on the tri-party agreement, the consent decree, and the requirements, the obligations that Department of Energy has signed up for. And that number hasn't been the budget, at least in the last 4 to 5 years, that the site has received. There have been compliant budgets in the past, I'm told. So I guess that's probably as much detail as I have on that. Anything, Stephanie, to add on that?
No, I don't have any more detail on that one.
So I don't know, Ryan, this might be one to flag too, and just I'm the way the question is asked, I'm not exactly sure if somebody's asking about a document, and maybe Dan, you can let us know. Are you looking for a document, or are you curious about the amount the budget should be to be compliant, and what years it was and what years it wasn't? Something like that. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay.
We'll watch the chat to see if that comes up.
For sure, yeah. So David, if you have, or not David, sorry, Dan, if you have any specifics on that question that you'd like answered, feel free to put in the chat. And if you have a contact we can reach you at, we'd be happy to reach out to you through email as well. And again, we can ask some of these questions over a blog as well, so everybody can see the answers. So with that, we do have another Facebook question that came in. This is another excellent question from Susan. She asks, how is Ecology supporting the Hanford Advisory Board?
I think both of us can answer that a little bit. I know I have several team members that participate in both the board and the committees. They assist me in putting together a presentation at each of the quarterly meetings and try and cover that and answer questions there. So I try to join in at least I'd love to join both days, and I try, and I usually end up seeing about a quarter to half of the meetings, unfortunately. But typically we have communications folks there. We have subject matter experts that are there to respond and answer questions and give presentations to the board and the committees as far as that goes. Stephanie, you might know more of other things we do to support the board.
Yeah, a lot along the same lines as what you said, David. So we make sure that we attend every board meeting. David usually gives a presentation, or someone in his stead if he can't attend. We make sure our communication staff is at every meeting. Communication staff are part of the PIC committee, Public Information Committee. They're not in their head. Yep. And then the few subcommittees, we have regular attendees, our project managers go to those meetings, make sure they attend. They often provide their perspective to any Department of Energy presentations. And we also try and make sure and provide any insight into the advice that the Hanford Advisory Board also wants to do.
And I have been on occasion citing some of the advice that the Hanford Advisory Board brings forward as well, especially on budget recently.
All right, Dana, do you have any more coming in on WebEx?
It looks like we have a clarification from Sharon. She posts on there, will removal of the 4 Snake River dams negatively impact Hanford?
Yeah, I still don't. I don't think so. I guess the only impact I can see at the moment if the dams were removed would be flows and timing of those flows. And those flows are, they're intermingled with the Columbia River. They could theoretically lower, I guess certain times of year there could be less water in the Columbia River in the Tri-Cities area. It's all both, I think the confluence, I'm trying to picture a map in my head. The confluence is either just south of the site or really close to that. So that's if that was to happen, I don't know that would negatively impact Hanford. You know, it could impact the groundwater levels, but it would make the groundwater farther down most likely rather than raise it. I'm just I'm thinking out loud, sorry. Stephanie, any other thoughts on that?
Just we can take that one and verify and get you a more technical response and talk to our hydrogeologists on that one just to verify. And there might even be another program within Ecology that's looking at those impacts too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I see that Dan gave some clarification. And so each year, the budget amount that would be compliant changes because it depends on the work that needs to be done. And the numbers I've seen most recently, when I say that, over the last 4 to 5 years, it's been $3 to $3.3 billion would be the compliant level. And they're getting 2.5 to 2.6 or 7 in their actual budget. So as you do that each year, $300 million a year times 5 years becomes $1.5 billion if I just did my math right. So it adds up quick. And so that's why it's really important for us to advocate for energy to have a compliant budget and encourage them to request a compliant budget. And, you know, they can't lobby their own, they can't lobby at the federal level. So, you know, they have to put forward to their management team, and their management team takes it to the Office of Management and Budget, and they do some negotiation, and eventually it comes out as a president's budget. And once the president's budget comes out, you know, that's the budget as a cabinet organization. That's the budget that's theirs until Congress takes an action that might change it either up or down. So there's a lot that goes into receiving a compliant budget on Hanford and across the complex, across the United States at all the different complexes that they're working on.
So thanks for the clarification, David. And Dan, if you would like some more specifics, feel free to put that in the chat or just let us know, and we can definitely follow up if you want more specifics beyond that. And I'd also like to take this chance to remind folks that if you haven't already, if you want to ask David and Stephanie any questions you have about Hanford and Ecology's role in Hanford cleanup, you can feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A box if you're on the WebEx stream, or the Facebook live chat if you're on the Facebook stream. And with that, Dana, do we have any more questions on WebEx coming in?
We do. It looks like Sharon is asking, this cleanup is not getting done as promised for the last 30 years. What politicians or agencies can we put pressure on as voters? And should we be supporting shipping waste to New Mexico?
You know, Sharon, great question. You know, the most involved and active federal elected officials would be Senator Cantwell, Senator Murray, Representative Newhouse, and now Representative Schreier is on one of the committees that can influence some of the funding and activities on site. And all of them are very proactive with us, and we've been providing them updates and feedback on infrastructure needs, on budget needs, on questions about, you know, different technologies that might be used on site to shorten the duration of cleanup or decrease costs and those kind of things. But those would be the 4 that are most active. Representative Smith, though, he has been helpful on some of the legislation to help us through as we're considering other technologies and activities on site. So I don't think I'm necessarily pressuring him would be, you know, you could obviously, Adam Smith, I'm sorry. I appreciate their support and their efforts to keep Washington up front, because there's 50 states and there's you know, 100 senators and 500 and what is it, 34 representatives, and they're all competing for the same buckets of money, and everything that they have going on in their states they feel is important and critical. So any kind of encouragement to our congressional folks is really appreciated by us. I know it's appreciated by Energy, even though they can't lobby for their own budget. I know it's appreciated by them as well. And yeah, the cleanup has taken longer than folks had hoped, for sure. It's really encouraging that treatment is actually going to start. I was out on site today with the director and Special Assistant Charlotte Mena, who does who does federal affairs work. We did a tour all day today, looked at some of these sites, had good conversation with the site manager, with EM2, which is Environmental Management 2 level at Energy, which is Todd Schrader. And so we talked about many of these topics that have come up here. And, you know, they appreciate the support from the community and from the constituents as well when it comes to budget. And, you know, their goal right now and their focus is getting treatment started and showing progress to help reinforce the idea of additional funding, et cetera.
Awesome. Thank you, David. We had another question come in on the Facebook live stream from Susan. She asks, when cleanup is done or the money runs out, is Ecology comfortable with the total waste load that will remain on the Hanford site in perpetuity? And how is this information shared with the public?
Well, right now, Susan, you've been involved in HAB for a long time, so you probably know the answer to this better than I do. But right now, we don't know how much is going to be left on site. We do anything that's on site. We do have requirements for what status that is in, and that if it is here, that over time it doesn't deteriorate and end up polluting the groundwater, the land, cause human health issues, or get back into the Columbia River. So do I have a comfort level that when the cleanup is done, that it'll be safe? I do. Do I know when it's going to happen? And do I have any, direct control over the funding that's going to do that? I don't, but I don't see the federal government walking away from their responsibilities here. I think everybody hopes that it could be done faster and that more resources could be dedicated to it. And we're working on that in the background with the congressional folks and with Energy as far as that goes. I don't know, Stephanie, you might have more technical details to get into that question than I gave.
I think Susan also asked how the public can be involved in the decisions, and part of that, David, you said we're not exactly sure what it will look like. We don't have all of the cleanup decisions done, but the public does get to weigh in on the proposed plan for cleanup decisions. That does go out for public comment. Permits that we issue for landfills, those go out for public comment. So I think there's the opportunity there for public to comment. And, as work continues to move forward, one thing the HAB is really good at is asking for specific things to come to the subcommittees for discussion or even the board. So that's another really great way for the public to provide input as well.
She was asking how we share that with the public as well from our perspective. And, we do it on our website. We do it through blogs. We do it through the HAB some. I'm missing some. My communications folks probably know more about how we share all that than I do, to be honest.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, David. Like I said, we share information, through the HAB, through these public comment period meetings that the agencies hold, through our social media, through our website. We do in-person outreach, at least when there's not a pandemic going on. We're just starting to get back into doing in-person outreach. So we just do a lot of just, public involvement outreach to get the word out about Hanford and to share the various stuff going on with Hanford and to try to make it easier to understand. And we're always trying to improve on our abilities to, share information about Hanford to the public. So I think you did a pretty good job kind of describing that, David. Dana, what else we have on WebEx?
Dan's back with another question. He asks, will there be enough electricity if the snake dams are removed?
And it's not really our wheelhouse on the electricity side. I'm not even sure. It seemed to me that most of the Snake River dams were for irrigation purposes more so than power generation, but I don't even know that for sure. I don't know, Stephanie, you're from the area. You may know more than me just from common knowledge, but I don't have any detailed information on that.
I don't have any more, unfortunately.
Okay.
All right, we currently don't have any on Facebook right now that are new, but we have another question that came in from Matthew Campbell. He asks, is Ecology involved with permitting of the small modular nuclear reactor additions at the Columbia Generating Station?
So the permitting side will be done through EFSEC, Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council. And so the permitting process, I should probably hand that over to Stephanie since you are my permit guru. Why am I answering this question? Go for it.
Well, you started off 100% accurate, David. So any permitting would be done through our sister agency, the Energy Facilities Site Evaluation Council, for oversight of the Columbia Generating Station, their dangerous waste generation and management, as well as their NPDES permit. So, David, I think you know what that stands for better than I do.
National Pollution Elimination. I can't remember, permitting something.
Well, EFSEC basically contracts with us to provide oversight of their NPDES permit, their dangerous waste activities, and oversight of their air permitting. So chances are, if they do get, and as last time we spoke to them, it was probably a few months ago, they hadn't received anything regarding small modular reactors yet. But if there is the permitting effort for those, chances are we may be contracted. But as of now, we haven't supported that effort.
So NPDES, I had to write it down, sorry, National Pollution Discharge Elimination. I think it's system for the S. I can't remember for sure what the S stands for.
Dana, would you like to ask another one if we have another one?
Looks like there's one
I'm
more.
not sure if I'm having technical difficulties or not.
Looks like there's one more on climate change. And how is climate change affecting cleanup at Hanford now, and or how do you think it will affect cleanup in the future? Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about this one actually because it's an initiative of the agency. And some of the things I hear since I've been here are things like, fires, just how dry it is out on site and the fire activity and how we accommodate for that in permitting. There's also anticipated changes in weather patterns, so we may get more precipitation as well. So there's infiltration issues I could imagine we need to be thinking about going forward. I don't know, Stephanie, has the permitting side dove deeply into that yet? I know the agency has been thinking about it and is starting to do a deeper dive in it now.
Yeah, our air quality program just got funding to do a lot more associated with climate change. And so that will be something that especially our air engineers will be working closely with the air quality program to make sure as they're rolling out their new program, we're following that so we can implement it here at Hanford, but that is new and evolving.
Awesome. Thank you for the answers to that question. We have another one that came in from Susan on Facebook, and that question is, how can a member of the public or an organization get someone from Ecology to come to them with a tutorial when in-person outreach starts again? And if you guys like, I can go ahead and answer this one.
Go for it, Ryan.
Cool. So you can feel free to reach out to us through a variety of methods. If you go to our website, ecology.wa.gov/Hanford, you can go to the public education page, and there will be a speaker request form that you can fill out. And that will be, that's where you can, whether you're a school or a community organization, you can request somebody from our agency to come and present on Hanford. And I think you can even, select a specific Hanford topic if you like. Of course, you can also feel free to reach out to us directly. You can feel free to reach out to the email address, hanford@eci.wa.gov. And, Dana, myself, Ginger, we'd be happy to respond and get something set up with you all. So feel free just to reach out, again, whether it's over phone, over email, over the website, and we're more than happy to get something set up to, present on Hanford. And that goes for more than just in-person outreach. We're happy to keep doing virtual outreach if that's what you're more comfortable with. So we're definitely happy to do in-person or virtual on whatever suits your needs best. And that way we can also reach people, that might be out of state where we can't necessarily travel that far. So if you're from out of state, we're happy to, do a virtual outreach with you that way as well. And I'm not seeing any others on the WebEx yet, but we do have, Susan did ask another one after that, and she asks, does Washington State Ecology also regulate the U.S. Ecology disposal site on Hanford?
I'll hand that one to Stephanie. She knows the details better than me. I think it's yes and no.
Yeah, so my knowledge is pretty limited on US Ecology, but we are one of the agencies that's working on the US Ecology Matka cleanup site, and we're working closely with the Department of Health on that. Any more detail on it though, and we're happy to get it for you. We have a really good subject matter expert, our project manager who manages the US Ecology site. We can get you more information.
Definitely.
We have some pass-through funding that we send over to Department of Health and to help us with that as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So Susan, feel free if you have anything more specific you want to ask about U.S. Ecology, you can feel free to follow up with us. I know we have your email, so we can follow up with you if you have anything more you'd like to ask about that one. I'm still not seeing any new questions on the WebEx, and let me check Facebook real fast. So I'm not seeing anything new on Facebook yet, but again, if anybody has any questions you want to ask David or Stephanie about, Hanford Ecology's role in Hanford cleanup, feel free to put it in the Q&A box on WebEx or the Facebook live stream chat. And while we're waiting for a few more minutes, we recently attended an event called Hanford Live 2021, and that was with the EPA and the U.S. Department of Energy. And we didn't get to anywhere near the amount of questions that we wanted to answer, so we thought we do have a list of some of the questions that were asked for ecology specifically during Hanford Live, and we thought we'd try and answer just a couple of those questions tonight if we had time. So with that, I can go ahead and start off with this first question that was asked during Hanford Live, and that was, what are you doing to protect the Columbia River from groundwater contamination?
And Stephanie, do you want to take that one?
Happy to. So the Hanford site has a pretty large network of groundwater monitoring wells that Department of Energy uses to track the groundwater contamination plumes. They also have what are called pump and treat facilities. They have many along, I think like 5 along the river corridor, as well as 1 in the central plateau of the Hanford site. The pump and treat systems are composed of an extraction well that extracts the contaminated water, and then the contaminated water gets treated, and then the clean water gets re-injected back into the groundwater upstream of the contamination plume and then extracted again. So it's basically a loop of extracting contaminated water, re-injecting clean water, so that way we're trapping the contamination and continuing to treat it before it reaches the Columbia River.
And I got a preview of that on the site today. They have the main treatment plant on the plateau, and then they do have 5 units out by the river. And I learned something new that I hadn't learned yet, that I thought those ones out by the river were actually sent back to the main treatment plant, but they're actually self-contained treatment facilities. So it was a good use of my time today out on site.
For sure, and I'm sure you can relate, David. I'm sure we all can, but I know I've been here for just a couple of years now, but I've constantly learned new things about Hanford all the time, and it's never ceases to amaze me on just how complex cleanup at Hanford is. So with that, we do have another question from Hanford Live, the Hanford Live event we can ask, and that is, what does tribal engagement at the Hanford site look like?
Sure, I can take that one. We communicate regularly with the Nez Perce and the Yakima Nation, along with the Colvilles. And the Yakima Nation is much more active, and I'm assuming it's because of their proximity to the site. And there's also the Wanapum band that not as regular a basis that we end up visiting with and having contact with. But we have a monthly meeting with the Yakima Nation, and along with those routine conversations with the Umatilla and Nez Perce. And we cover a broad variety of topics through that meeting with the Yakima Nation. We also do it through public comment periods and consultation as well. So it's a high priority. Cultural resources are huge, and I was told on the trip today there's over 2,000 cultural sites out there. So it's really important for us to have that communication network with the tribal communities. Stephanie, anything to add on that?
I'd just make one clarification. David, you said the Colvilles, but I think you meant the Columbia Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation.
I do. You are correct. The Colvilles was from my previous life in the Central Region Office. I had the 7 Central Washington counties, and Colvilles, of course, were up in the Okanagan, and Chelan and Douglas area.
Awesome, and I'm still not seeing any new questions coming on the. Actually, we do have one question that I can ask right off the bat. This one's from Carrie Miller on Facebook, and Carrie asks, "Will there be a recording of this for viewing later?" And I can say there will be. We're recording the WebEx right now, and if you're on the Facebook live stream, it depends on the buffering time, but the Facebook live stream recording will be available immediately after the event as soon as it's done processing, which can be anywhere from a couple minutes to an hour or two from my experience with Facebook. Also, I think sometime tomorrow I'm going to put the recording of this conversation on our YouTube channel. And you can just search that by going to just the Washington Department of Ecology on YouTube, and it will be up on there sometime tomorrow. So the recording will be available on social media, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And I'm not seeing any others coming in on the WebEx yet. So I'll just let everybody know again, if you have any questions you want to ask David or Stephanie, feel free to put them in the Q&A box on WebEx or the Facebook live chat. We have another question we can go ahead and ask from our Hanford Live event from a couple weeks ago. And this one is from Gary Peterson, and he asked at the event, why does the tri-party agreement not specify how much waste must be treated by when? Such an approach would provide energy with greater latitude to consider treatment and disposal alternatives.
Well, the couple of pieces to that one. Why doesn't it dictate or specify? I don't think when they signed the agreement they knew exactly what the magnitude of the issue was. So they were focused on what's the date it needs to be done. And if I remember right, it's 2047 is when it's all supposed to be done. Obviously, with the delay in getting certain things finished and the underestimation of the magnitude of the cleanup, it's going to take longer than that. And that's one of those things that's in discussion, both at holistic negotiations and just in general, on what's that time frame really look like. It's interesting, if you don't have deadlines or you don't have quotas, does anything ever get done? It's kind of the underlying question I feel in that request or that question. And we're cognizant of that and trying to not have the long-term milestones that say all of it's supposed to be done at this time slide or not slide very much, and work more with reorganizing or rethinking the more short-term milestones, and so that we can continue to move forward. I feel like, I don't want to say it this way because ecology doesn't necessarily need to pressure energy to get this done. They want to get it done. And as there's changes in leadership and changes in management, there's always a temptation to go back and look for new technology, or did somebody miss something? So sometimes we get sidetracked, and we're working on a couple of pathways. And so far we haven't found a more efficient, cost-effective way to do it than what was originally laid out. It's just, at the time they wrote the agreement, that there was no idea of just what it would take to get this work done. I don't know, Stephanie, if you have things to add to any of that or not.
No, I don't. That was a good response, David.
Awesome. So we had Susan ask another question on the Facebook live stream, and actually I see this is a question she asked that we didn't get to during Hanford Live. She asks, does Washington State Department of Ecology, actually, sorry, this is the last question. She says, any news to share on the comprehensive negotiations with Department of Energy? And I believe she's referencing what's also known as the holistic negotiations.
Yeah, I'm sure she is. And I think probably most people that are listening to this today know that the holistic negotiations are, they came about because it was becoming obvious that somewhere between 14 and 16 milestones were in danger of not being met or weren't going to be met. And Ecology suggested, let's do a reset. Let's get together and negotiate going forward. Those negotiations were monthly was the big group, and then there was other weekly side committees doing work. up until February this year. And then we increased the frequency of those meetings to weekly to try and gain some momentum. And it worked. We've had some really good, transparent conversations. And the people participating would be Department of Energy, EPA, and Ecology, Environmental Protection Agency. Sorry, I'm using my acronyms and I'm not supposed to. And of course, we have our Attorney General's office. They're representing us, and Energy has Department of Justice representing them, as does the Environmental Protection Agency. So you can imagine it's not a small group. Even in our small group discussions, I think there's 20 of us online at any given time. But regardless, I'm going down a rabbit hole. We're making good progress. As we accelerated the reoccurrence of those meetings, we found out that we have a lot more common ground, I think, than people thought. And it's not necessarily about what needs to be done. It's about the timing of getting it done and where the funding comes from or where it should be applied in sequence. So right now the director has given us permission to continue those discussions as long as they are looking promising and providing fruit, for lack of a better word. And that's what we're doing. And right now, I wish I could say that we're going to have at least an agreement in principle by the end of August or September, but I think we will by the fall sometime. I can't predict exactly when that will be, but somewhere in that time frame, I'm thinking.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I think we might have had some more questions coming on WebEx. Dana, would you like to ask one of those ones?
Yeah, it looks like it. Dan Series posts, what are Ecology's main remaining priorities to protect soil and water resources in the river corridor? And what's the next step for the K reactor areas and the N reactor areas?
And that's getting into more detail than I know. And I know that our cleanup section manager would probably be the best one to answer that question, but maybe Stephanie can add something.
Well, I can say that EPA's lead for the K area, so that's a good question for the EPA. Ecology is lead for the N area. As far as I know, the majority of the soil cleanup has been done in the N area. That reactor has been placed in the interim safe storage as well. Other work in the river corridor that Ecology would like to see move forward, particularly the 324 building. There will be a closure plan associated with some hot cells within that building. It's also covered under CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Response and Liability Act. So it's also a cleanup site, and that will also include soil cleanup. There is a decision on the groundwater cleanup for the 300 area already. But for us, for Ecology, definitely removal and cleanup of the 324 building is one of the last large remaining pieces of work that needs to happen in the river corridor. And that's about as much as I can say on that, David.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So Dan, if you'd like anything more specific, feel free to reach out to us, or you can provide your email and we can touch base with you, and we'd be happy to follow up with anything else more specific you have for the N reactor area. And it sounds like if you have anything specific for the K reactor area, that might be better directed towards the EPA. And so with that, we have another question that did come in from Dan Solitz, and he asks, do you know how much contamination gets past pump and treat and enters the Columbia?
This is probably another Stephanie question, but I know I've seen the maps of what the plumes used to look like versus what they look like now, and there's been some major improvements, especially along the river corridor and in the Central Plateau. I've also understand from staff that there is measurable contamination that gets to the river, but as soon as it hits the river, the mixture rate it's just not measurable after that. But I don't know much beyond that. Stephanie, anything to add to that?
I think we can get you a pretty good technical response to that if we take it back and talk to our hydrogeologists. I know it depends on type of contaminant and everything, so we can give you a pretty good response if we consult our subject matter experts. So Ryan, I'd say let's take that one back.
Okay, great. Dan, if you're able, would you be willing to provide your email in the chat box, or you could just email us directly, hanford@ecy.wa.gov. And we'd be happy to follow up with you about some more specific information about that with our hydrogeologists. Do we have any others that came in, Dana?
No, I'm not seeing any. Oops, wait, this just snuck in. No.
It's Dan's email.
Yep.
All right, well, with that, I'm not seeing any more on Facebook. I'm not seeing any more on WebEx quite yet. So I think we'll just provide one more opportunity for folks to go ahead and submit any questions they have on the WebEx chat or the Facebook live stream. So I'll go ahead and give everybody a few minutes to go ahead and put those questions, if they have any more, into the chat, and we can kind of fill that time with another Hanford Live question. And this one also came from Gary Peterson during Hanford Live, and he asked, why have DOE and Ecology decided to delay their preparation, characterization, and readiness to ship Hanford transuranic waste to the waste isolation pilot plant?
I don't know that we've decided necessarily to delay it. And I'm assuming it's in reference to TBI. And Stephanie, are you nodding or shaking your head on that?
I think it's in relation to M91.
Okay.
The milestone extensions that we granted that pushed out those milestones for the waste being shipped to the waste isolation pilot plant.
Okay. And my knowledge on that is the waste whip. I'm just going to call it whip because I can never, I'll stumble over the words. They had an issue on site and everybody's shipments got delayed, and each of the different complexes across the United States, whether it's in New York, California, wherever it might be, got pushed out, and the Hanford is in queue to send waste, but it's down the list a bit. And so I don't think it was energy or ecology that necessarily delayed it. I think it was a situation that happened at the facility, but you know, we can get more details on that. And I guess Gary isn't on right now, so one of those things we can touch base with him on and get some clarification on what he was asking, you know, what he was thinking about.
Okay, so still not seeing anything new on WebEx or Facebook, so I'll go ahead and just ask one more question to give folks time to put any questions in if they have any left. So this question, it also came from Hanford Live. Let me see if I can find it here. So how do the roles of the three tri-party agreement agencies differ?
So DOE is the owner operator of the Hanford site, and they manage the overall cleanup effort. And then EPA and Ecology are the two main agencies who regulate the Hanford cleanup itself. Although they're not a party to the tri-party agreement, the Department of Health is also on site, as we've kind of alluded to earlier. And you know, our role here specifically is to make sure that the environment and human health is protected and the cleanup happens, and that Department of Energy meets their obligation to the residents of the state of Washington and all those who were in the effort for the Manhattan Project and to do the work. As far as that relationship and those roles, you know, there's always a healthy tension between a regulator and a permittee, and we can always do better on keeping that healthy and not diverging into personalities and things. So we're always working on that, trying to make sure that we're communicating in a professional manner, and that you know, we operate in a safe way where people can be transparent in discussing problems so we can fix things, because you just can't address what you're not talking about. So I see my role as my staff, as our staff, our team gets stuck on things. My role is to get in and facilitate continued conversation, and I know Stephanie does much of the same in her daily work as well with our team. So that's kind of the general gist of the relationship between the parties.
Wonderful, thanks, David. So kind of wrapping the Q&A session up, I'm not seeing any more coming on Facebook or WebEx, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up the Q&A session. We do have a couple questions that we weren't able to get into super specific, so we've committed to following up with them specifically over email. I think we can also put those same answers in a blog and push that out so that everybody can see those answers to those questions. And that would be, you know, the questions from Dan and from Matthew. And if I miss anybody else, feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email at hanford@ecy.wa.gov, and we're happy to answer any questions that didn't get answered tonight. So with that, I'll kick it to Dana to kind of close us out.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for participating tonight and asking us some really good questions and watching. This was recorded and it will be posted on our our Ecology website and on our YouTube channel, like Ryan was saying earlier. If you do have any other questions, please feel free at any time to reach out to us over our hanford@ecy.wa.gov email address. That's probably the fastest way to get a hold of us. Keep an eye out for upcoming future conversations. We have some good ones coming up. And I'll ask David and Stephanie if you have any parting thoughts, and then I have a fun last question for you.
Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and go first?
I don't think I have any parting thoughts, just I appreciate everyone taking the time to tune in this afternoon and join us. I appreciate you accepting what were pretty high level responses to questions and allowing us to take the technical questions back and get you answers, but just really appreciate everyone taking time out tonight to join us.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. And I'm the same. I appreciate you could be doing anything and you're here listening to us, or if you listen to this video later, you took the time to watch and hear from us. And I agree. I just can't possibly know every detail of that 85 people are doing. And so I appreciate your patience as we get you clear answers to some of those more detailed questions. And it's, you know, I appreciate your time.
Okay, and then our fun last question is, please tell us about any hobby or you look forward to your time when you actually get to go on vacation.
Stephanie, you want to go first
you can
again?
Go first if you want.
All right.
I'd love to. So one of my favorite things to do is spending time with my family. I have one nephew and he is so much fun. He just turned 3 years old. And fun fact, I just learned 3-year-olds are called three-nagers. He definitely fits that definition. I also really like to garden. I go wine tasting with friends. I sew, crochet. Probably my favorite thing to do next to spending time with my family is playing with my 2 little dogs, Penny Rose and Lola. And I am going to go on a vacation soon. In 2 weeks, I'm going to go up to Alaska, visit some friends, go sightseeing, hiking, and just enjoy the time up there. Now that things are opening up again, it'll be great to resume traveling. How about you, David?
Well, thanks, Stephanie. You know, hobbies wise, my wife and I just can't help ourselves. When there's rescue animals, we get involved. And I've got 15 horses at our house, all from different situations that weren't the best. 7 of them are probably going to stay with us until they are ready to move on, just because of the situation they came from or the injury they may have or whatever it might be. So we do a lot with our horses, and we have a couple of pigs from a fire that we inherited as well. And then I ride motorcycles. I have a street bike, and I just love to go cruise for 100, 150 miles through the mountains, and you get a chance to feel the changes in temperature and the changes in smells and that kind of thing. So I enjoy doing that. And then I'm a classic car fan. So if there's a car show, I'm generally stopping in to check it out. You know, as far as things going on, my wife and I do plan to go camp along the southern Oregon and Northern California coast here over the next couple of weeks. And so I'm looking forward to that. It's been a while since I got out of the office and disconnected, and I'm ready for that. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to having staff back in the office. We anticipate, you know, a soft opening for our staff to come in August. If they want to come in, they can. And then in September, it'll be a little more defined. And so getting people back, having some face-to-face interaction, I really enjoy that. So I'm looking forward to that. And, you know, overall, I love the job. And as I said earlier, it mixes my 2 favorite jobs in the past together, with a little bit of the legislative activity along with budget and policy and technical work and just a complex project. I love them, trying to find answers and common ground. And this just fulfills all those things. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So thanks. And I want to thank the communications team for putting this together, by the way. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Appreciate the work on this.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for joining today. And especially a huge thank you to all of you who attended tonight's event, whether it be on WebEx or Facebook. You know, can't do these events without you. And we encourage you to, you know, ask us questions anytime you have any Hanford related questions. You know, an easy way to reach out to us, again, is hanford@ecy.wa.gov. You don't have to wait for events like these to ask us questions about Hanford cleanup. We're always happy to help you out how we can and answer any questions you have about Hanford cleanup. And again, thank you to everybody for participating tonight, and have a good night.